Humanity had long been a forgotten, overlooked species in the galactic scale. For centuries, they had struggled on a small blue planet orbiting a modest star, while the galaxy's grand empires, vast, ancient, and powerful, flourished. The Virek, the Zorix, the Gorgons, and the Zalith were among the galaxy's most feared races, their empires sprawling across hundreds of star systems. All had one thing in common. They shared a dismissive attitude toward the human race. To these alien civilizations, humans were a primitive species, isolated, weak, and hardly a blip on the radar of galactic politics. The Virek saw them as little more than an amusing oddity, their technology nothing more than outdated relics in comparison to the advanced weaponry and spacefaring capabilities of the galaxy's elite. The Zorix were equally condescending, seeing human efforts to reach the stars as laughable, another failed experiment from a race too immature to understand the true power of the universe. But humanity had a secret, an unquantifiable, unrelenting drive fueled by their sheer willpower. Their greatest strength was not their technology, but their ability to adapt, to think outside the box, and to fight against overwhelming odds with a fierce desperation that no other species could match. The galaxy would soon learn that it had severely underestimated them. The first warning sign came when a small human colony on the distant planet of Tethys was attacked by a scouting fleet of the Virek. The Virek, believing that the colony was weak and unimportant, descended upon it with brutal efficiency. They expected to wipe it out in a matter of hours, and they almost did. What they didn't anticipate was the human spirit. As the Virek prepared to land, they encountered fierce resistance. Human soldiers, armed with crude weapons and limited technology, fought back with everything they had. It was nothing short of a bloodbath. The Virek had underestimated their enemy, and now they were paying the price. In a surprise ambush, a ragtag group of human fighters, led by Captain Lena Davis, managed to sabotage one of the Virek's largest landing ships, causing a massive explosion that sent the fleet into disarray. Despite the human casualties, the Virek were forced to retreat. The colony was saved, though only just, and the news of the humans' improbable victory spread quickly across the galaxy. At first, the alien empires scoffed. It was a fluke, they said. Just a lucky shot, a desperate last stand. But the seeds of doubt had been planted. What had once been an inconsequential species had proven capable of taking down a fleet, of forcing the Virek to retreat. And though the Virek Empire was vast, this was the first sign of something they could not ignore. Back on Earth, humanity celebrated the victory, but the costs were high. The loss of Tethys was a blow, but it galvanized human resolve. They knew they could no longer afford to be passive in a galaxy that looked down on them. They needed to prepare, both technologically and mentally, to face the greater challenges that lay ahead. Lena Davis, now a war hero and symbol of human resilience, was called back to Earth to lead a new initiative, the establishment of a unified human military force. No longer would they be the underdogs. No longer would they hide behind the walls of their home world. Humanity was going to take its place in the galactic stage, but there was more to come. The Zorix, not content with a single defeat, began to view the humans with a growing sense of unease. The galaxy's great empires, who had once laughed at the thought of humanity being a threat, began to watch. Some prepared for the inevitable clash, while others were content to continue their mocking ways. Humanity, however, was done with being laughed at. They had tasted the bitterness of underestimation, and they had seen what they were capable of when pushed to their limits. With every ounce of their collective will, they began to build. Human ships, once primitive, began to evolve. Technology that had been considered nothing more than science fiction began to take form. The next encounter would not be so easy for their enemies. The mocking would stop. The underestimation would end. The news of humanity's first victory over the Virek had spread like wildfire across the galaxy. For a brief moment, there was stunned silence among the other alien empires. The Virek had always been seen as invincible, their military power unmatched. Yet here they were, retreating from a human colony that should have been nothing more than an insignificant speck on the galactic map. The question echoed across countless communication channels. How could this happen? But while the galaxy's powerful empires grappled with the implications of this unexpected defeat, humanity was already moving forward. The victory on Tethys had ignited something deep within the human spirit, a drive to prove that they were more than just an afterthought. They would no longer be passive in a galaxy that had long regarded them as inconsequential. Captain Lena Davis, now heralded as a symbol of human determination, was tasked with a new mission, one that would solidify humanity's place in the galaxy. She was ordered to lead a covert strike against a Zorix supply depot on the barren moon of Kasara. The Zorix, a brutal and militaristic species, were known for their ruthlessness in combat. They had scoffed at humanity, dismissing them as too primitive to pose any real threat. The mission seemed like a suicide operation. Kasara was heavily guarded, and the Zorix were notorious for their lethal defenses. Yet, with a small force of just 30 soldiers and the most basic of equipment, Lena and her team would have to breach the compound and destroy the supply depot. No reinforcements, no backup, just raw determination. The humans knew they couldn't match the Zorix head-to-head in terms of firepower or technology. What they had, however, was something the Zorix did not: an ability to adapt, innovate, and fight with every ounce of their being. It was a lesson learned the hard way on Tethys. The strike force landed under the cover of darkness, using the terrain to conceal their movements. They knew that if they were spotted, they wouldn't last more than a few minutes against the superior Zorix forces. The operation hinged on surprise and humanity's ability to fight dirty. Lena, as she had done on Tethys, assumed a leadership role with calculated precision. Her plan was simple but effective: get in, sabotage the main energy grid, and escape before the Zorix could mount a proper defense. The humans used primitive but effective tools: explosives, makeshift traps, and even the Zorix's own communication systems against them. As they infiltrated the compound, Lena's team encountered stiff resistance, but the Zorix were caught off guard. Their advanced weaponry and massive numbers couldn't overcome the humans' ingenuity. One by one, Lena's soldiers struck with surgical precision, disabling key systems, setting traps, and causing confusion. The Zorix couldn't respond fast enough. In the heart of the compound, Lena and her team planted the final charge, setting the stage for the depot's destruction. The countdown began. But just as they were about to exfiltrate, the Zorix launched a full-scale counterattack. The humans had triggered the Zorix's security protocol, and now the moon's defenses were coming online. The enemy was closing in, but Lena's team was ready to make their escape. The next few moments were pure chaos. The Zorix surged forward, their blasters firing in every direction. The humans, in a desperate bid for survival, fought with a ferocity that none of their enemies had ever witnessed. Explosions rocked the compound, and debris rained down as the humans made their retreat. They ran, not for glory or fame, but for survival. As the last of the charges went off, the compound erupted into flames, sending a shock wave through the moon's surface. The Zorix were left with nothing but burning wreckage. Lena and her team had completed their mission, but not without cost. Only 10 of the original 30 soldiers had made it out alive. The human victory on Kasera was another shock to the galaxy. The Zorix, so accustomed to crushing lesser species with ease, had been caught entirely off guard. Their arrogance had led them to underestimate the humans, and now they were paying the price. The destruction of the supply depot dealt a significant blow to the Orcs war machine, and their empire would never be the same. But even more alarming was the message it sent to the galaxy. Humanity was no longer a species to be dismissed. They were capable of striking back, not with overwhelming force, but with ingenuity, cunning, and a determination that no one could match. The mocking of humans had turned into fear, and the galaxy's elite powers began to realize that humanity was no longer the weak, defenseless species they once thought them to be. The humans had proved that they could fight dirty, and they would continue to innovate relentlessly. In the wake of the stunning victories on Tethys and Kisara, humanity had made its mark on the galaxy. No longer were they the overlooked species, doomed to be ignored or dismissed. The alien empires were forced to confront an uncomfortable truth. Humanity, against all expectations, had the capability to challenge their might. But these initial victories, while impressive, were not enough. If humanity was to stand on equal footing with the galaxy's most powerful races, they needed more. Captain Lena Davis, now a figurehead in humanity's rise, knew that the next phase of their war for survival would not be won with bravery alone. They had used their wit and cunning to survive, but to truly conquer, they needed to close the technological gap that had long been their downfall. It was time for humanity to delve into the dark corners of the galaxy and find something that could truly level the playing field. Alien technology. On a distant world known only to a handful of explorers, humanity's top engineers had uncovered a long-forgotten research station buried beneath layers of shifting sands. This station, once owned by an ancient race called the Elcorians, was said to house some of the most advanced technology ever conceived, far beyond what the human race had ever managed to invent. The Elcorians had been wiped out in a mysterious war centuries ago, their once glorious empire now reduced to ruins. But their secrets, if humanity could unlock them, could be the key to their survival. The journey to the Elcorian facility was perilous. Only the bravest of human soldiers and scientists were chosen to accompany Lena on this mission. As they approached the long-abandoned site, a sense of awe and unease settled over the team. No one knew what to expect. Would the Elcorians' technology even still function? Would it be compatible with humanity's own systems? After weeks of painstaking excavation, they reached the heart of the facility, a vast underground complex, humming with dormant energy. In the center of the room lay a single object, a sleek, metallic device, intricately designed and pulsating with a faint light. It was a long-range propulsion engine, an ancient relic of the Elcorians, capable of speeds that humans had only dreamed of. But more than that, it was a key to understanding an entire lost civilization's advances in artificial intelligence, weaponry, and starship design. The human engineers scrambled to reverse engineer the technology. Days turned into weeks, as they worked tirelessly to integrate the Elcorian propulsion systems into their own ships. It was an uphill battle. Many of the components were so advanced that even the brightest human minds struggled to understand them fully. But there was one thing the humans had that the Elcorians did not: an unparalleled drive to innovate. Through a mix of human creativity, alien blueprints, and raw determination, the team began to unlock the secrets hidden within the Elcorian technology. They combined it with their own knowledge, enhancing human ships, weapons, and armor to a level that rivaled the mightiest of alien empires. It wasn't just a leap forward in technology, it was a revolution. Meanwhile, back on Earth, humanity began to consolidate its forces. The human fleets, once a hodgepodge of patched-together ships, now boasted sleek, powerful vessels capable of matching and surpassing the galactic powers they once feared. The Orcs, the Virek, and even the Zalith could no longer ignore humanity's sudden technological prowess. The first real test of their new technology came sooner than expected: a Zorix battle fleet intent on wiping out what they now saw as a growing threat arrived on the outer rim of human-controlled space. They had underestimated humanity once before, but this time there would be no mercy. Captain Davis and her newly assembled fleet stood ready. The Zorix had come for blood, but what they didn't know was that they were walking into a trap. Using the newly acquired Elcorian tech, the human fleet had been upgraded with stealth capabilities and energy shields far beyond anything the Zorix had ever encountered. As the two fleets clashed in the cold void of space, the humans held their ground with remarkable ferocity, their ships darting in and out of the fight, using their superior agility and firepower to outmaneuver their foes. For the first time in history, the humans were not merely holding their own, they were pushing the Zorix back. The battle was a stunning display of human ingenuity, with the humans using their advanced technology not just for raw power but for precision strikes, taking down the Zorix's most advanced warships one by one. By the time the Zorix fleet was forced to retreat, the galaxy knew the unthinkable. Humanity had emerged as a force to be reckoned with, and the aliens could no longer afford to mock them. The Elcorian technology had turned the tide. Humanity's victory at the Battle of Valtara was a turning point in the war, one that sent shockwaves through the galaxy. Lena Davis watched as the remains of the Zorix fleet drifted through space, a testament to the human willpower and their newfound technological might. She knew that this was just the beginning. Humanity had proven it could innovate, but the real challenge lay ahead. The galaxy would never look at humans the same way again, but there was still much to be done. Humanity had taken its first steps into the With the Zorix retreating from the Battle of Valtara, the galaxy's perception of humanity had irrevocably shifted. No longer seen as a fringe species on the edge of the galaxy, humans had proven that they were capable of standing toe-to-toe with the galaxy's greatest powers. The Zorix had been forced to retreat, their once proud fleet shattered by humanity's newfound technological might. But while the victory was monumental, Lena Davis knew it was merely the first step in a much larger, more dangerous journey. The galaxy's elites were not prone to making the same mistake twice. The Zorix, humiliated and enraged by their loss, began rallying their allies. The Virek, the Zalith, and other factions that had long held the reins of power would not allow humanity to rise unchallenged. They would move quickly to crush this new threat before humanity could gain a foothold in the wider galaxy. Lena stood on the bridge of the Thunderclash, her command ship, watching as the star systems of the Human Confederation began to fortify their defenses. The message was clear. The humans were preparing for the coming storm, a war that would not be won on their terms, but through sheer tenacity. Humanity had no illusions. Survival would require sacrifice, innovation, and most of all, unity. But, despite the overwhelming odds stacked against them, humanity had one thing their enemies could not replicate: the sheer force of will to fight, innovate, and persevere. They would not be cowed. If anything, their victories had only stoked their desire to push further into the galaxy. The first true test of humanity's resolve came when the Zalith, the most calculating and technologically advanced of the galactic empires, decided to take action. The Zalith, long known for their espionage and intricate political manipulations, launched a covert attack against human-held systems in the Hydera cluster. It was a subtle strike, sabotage of key military installations, the assassination of influential leaders, and the infiltration of human defense networks. The Zalith were not interested in an open war. They intended to destroy humanity from the inside out. But the Zalith miscalculated once again. They had underestimated the depth of human resolve. Lena, having caught wind of the Zalith scheming, initiated a counteroffensive that would force the enemy into the light. The plan was simple, but risky. human forces would infiltrate the Zalith's own ranks, turning their secrecy and subterfuge against them. It was a gamble, but Lena was certain that humanity's greatest strength lay in their adaptability. The Zalith may have been masters of subterfuge, but humanity knew how to improvise when pushed into a corner. Within days, human operatives, trained in the art of counterintelligence, began to infiltrate Zalith territories. Working alongside resistance groups within the Zalith Empire, the humans slowly dismantled the enemy's covert network from within. They turned the Zalith's own spy drones against them, using them to collect vital intelligence on enemy movements. For every Zalith agent that infiltrated human systems, a human agent returned the favor, planting misinformation and creating chaos within Zalith-controlled areas. By the time the Zalith realized what was happening, the humans had already turned the tables. Their political and military operations were now in disarray, with key leaders exposed and their most secretive operations sabotaged. The Zalith were no longer the shadowy manipulators. They were scrambling, their empire showing cracks they never expected. Yet, despite the successes, Lena knew that this was only the beginning of an even greater struggle. The Orcs were still reeling from their defeat, and the other alien empires had begun to rally behind them, forming a coalition to eliminate humanity before it could truly establish itself as a galactic power. But humanity, emboldened by their recent successes, refused to back down. Their resolve was stronger than ever. They would continue to innovate, to fight with every resource at their disposal. And more importantly, they would not be cowed by the threat of overwhelming numbers or superior technology. In the heart of their war effort, Lena knew that there was a critical piece still missing: the human ability to forge alliances. While their technological capabilities had improved exponentially, their success on the galactic stage would hinge on their ability to unite other oppressed species against the alien empires that had once dominated the galaxy. Whispers began to circulate through the human fleets. Humanity was not alone in its desire for freedom. There were alien species out there, smaller, weaker races that had long been enslaved or oppressed by the empires of the galaxy. These species had watched the humans rise and were beginning to see them as symbols of hope, not just in their fight for survival, but in their fight for the future of the galaxy itself. The next step in humanity's journey would not be just to fight the empires, it would be to unite the fractured species of the galaxy under one banner. If humanity was to face the full might of the galactic empires, they would need allies. But even as the humans began to prepare for this next phase, Lena couldn't shake the nagging feeling that the greatest test was yet to come. The alien empires were not the only threat on the horizon. Beneath the surface of the galaxy, something older and more dangerous was stirring, a force that had the potential to challenge humanity's survival in ways they could not yet comprehend. And if humanity was to truly stand the galaxy was on the edge of a precipice. Humanity, once thought of as weak and insignificant, had shaken the very foundations of galactic power. But the greatest danger to humanity's newfound place in the cosmos wasn't the vengeful Orcs, the treacherous Zalith, or the ambitious Virek. No. It was something far more ancient and far more terrifying, a force that had lain dormant for millennia. In the quiet depths of space, beyond the borders of known civilization, humanity's most troubling discovery was slowly unfolding. It started with a whisper, an anomaly in deep space, far from any human colony or known alien world. At first, it was dismissed as a malfunction in the data processing systems, an error caused by faulty sensors or cosmic radiation. But when multiple independent observatories confirmed the same anomaly, the galaxy could no longer ignore it. Something was out there, something ancient and powerful. The anomaly itself was a massive disturbance in the fabric of space-time, a tear in the fabric of the galaxy itself. It was not a natural phenomenon. This was something deliberate, something engineered. For decades, the galaxy's greatest minds had speculated on the origins of such disturbances, but no one had expected a discovery of this magnitude. It was a relic from an age long forgotten. Captain Lena Davis stood in the command center of the Thunderclash, staring at the data that had just arrived. The anomaly wasn't just a tear in space, it was a signal, one that humanity had unintentionally broadcast to the farthest reaches of the galaxy. They had awakened something that had remained dormant for eons, something that could destroy everything they had worked for. "This is bad," Lena muttered under her breath as she scanned the reports. "We've stirred something we shouldn't have." The team of scientists and engineers aboard the Thunderclash had been working around the clock to decode the strange signal emanating from the anomaly. It was unlike any communication they had ever encountered. There were no words, no intelligible patterns, just a low, resonant hum that reverberated through the galaxy like a warning bell. "Captain," said Dr. Aiden Cortez, the lead scientist. On the project, his voice filled with a mix of dread and excitement. "I think we've identified it. The signal, it's a beacon. A signal to them." Lena's heart skipped a beat. "Who?" Dr. Cortez hesitated before replying, his voice barely a whisper. "The Elders." Lena's mind raced. The Elders were the stuff of myth, the ancient race that had supposedly seeded the galaxy with life long before any known species had evolved. It was said that the Elders had created the first galaxies and watched over the universe as silent observers, guiding its development from the shadows. Then, one day, they disappeared, vanishing into the depths of space, leaving only their artifacts behind. Their very existence had been doubted by many, dismissed as legends or fantasy. But the signal was no myth. It was real, and it was calling them. The Elders' technology was believed to be far beyond anything the galaxy's civilizations could imagine, capable of manipulating entire star systems, reshaping entire planets. But if the Elders were truly awakening, it meant something far worse. Their ancient power could either save humanity or destroy it completely. Lena clenched her fists. The last few months had been hard enough, fighting against the galaxy's most powerful empires, proving that humanity could stand on its own. But this was beyond anything they had ever encountered. She turned to her command team, her eyes hardening with resolve. "Prepare the fleet. We're heading to the source of the signal." The Thunderclash and a fleet of newly formed human warships set course for the coordinates. The journey would take them deep into uncharted space, past the known territories and into the very heart of the anomaly. But Lena knew they had no choice. They had awakened something they didn't understand, and if they didn't confront it head on, they might find themselves wiped from existence. The closer they came to the anomaly, the more intense the disturbances became. Space itself seemed to warp and shift, as though the very laws of physics were breaking down. Time felt distorted, dragging and stretching in unnatural ways. And as they neared the epicenter, they began to see the effects of the Elders' power firsthand. Huge structures, massive enough to be entire starships, drifted in the void like ancient monuments, their surfaces covered in strange, glowing symbols. They were remnants of the Elders' civilization, long abandoned but still radiating immense power. The crew aboard the Thunderclash stared in awe, but there was no time for wonder. They were about to face the unimaginable. Suddenly, the communications console lit up with a single eerie transmission. It was a voice, low, ancient, and dripping with authority. "You have disturbed us, humans. The time of your reckoning is at hand." The voice reverberated through every ship in the fleet, sending chills down the spine of every crew member. The galaxy's greatest minds had always thought the Elders were a myth, but now they knew the truth. The Elders were real, and they were not pleased. Lena's heart pounded in her chest. The path ahead was unknown. But one thing was certain. Humanity had just stepped into a battle that would test. The Thunderclash hovered at the edge of the anomaly, its crew on high alert. Captain Lena Davis could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her. The voice they had just heard, a voice that seemed to come from the very fabric of the galaxy itself, had made one thing clear. Humanity had unwittingly stirred an ancient power, and the elders were not pleased. Despite their recent victories against the Zorix and Zalith, this new threat was unlike anything humanity had ever faced. The elders were not mere conquerors. They were the architects of the galaxy itself, a species whose technological capabilities far surpassed anything even the most advanced civilizations could comprehend. And if the words of the ancient transmission were any indication, the elders were not interested in peaceful coexistence. They had been disturbed, and they would take action. "Captain," Dr. Aiden Cortez called out, his voice tense over the comms. "We're receiving another transmission. It's coming from the heart of the anomaly." Lena's pulse quickened. "What are they saying?" Cortez's voice crackled with urgency. "They're offering us a choice." The crew of the Thunderclash fell silent. In the face of this unimaginable power, humanity had only one chance to survive. Lena's mind raced, trying to grasp the magnitude of what was happening. The elders had been silent for millennia. Now, they were reaching out to humans with an offer. "Play it," Lena ordered. A low hum filled the comms, followed by a voice, familiar yet ancient, carrying the weight of countless eons. It was as if the voice itself was woven from the stars. "Humanity, you have awakened us. You have shown that you are unlike any species we have encountered in our long existence. Your drive, your will to survive, it intrigues us. But you must understand, your place in the galaxy is not as simple as you believe. You are not meant to be rulers. You are not meant to be conquerors. You are children who have stumbled upon forces far beyond your understanding." The voice paused, as if considering its next words carefully. "We offer you a choice. Leave this place, return to your homeworld, and never speak of the elders again. You will live, you will thrive, but you will remain in your corner of the galaxy, unnoticed and insignificant as you were before." Lena clenched her jaw, her fingers curling into a fist. The elders were offering them submission. They wanted humanity to turn away, to forget the power they had found, and return to being the meek species they had been. It was a tempting offer for some, preservation at the cost of their pride and ambition. But Lena knew there could be no turning back. Humanity had fought too long, had bled too much to accept such a fate. "Or," the voice continued, "we will show you the consequences of disturbing forces you cannot comprehend. We will erase you from existence, along with the knowledge that brought you here. You will be forgotten, a footnote in the endless history of the stars." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving a suffocating silence in its wake. The crew exchanged uneasy glances, the weight of the elders' words sinking in. The choice was clear. Humanity could either bow down and survive as insignificant specks in the galaxy, or they could stand tall, defiant, in the face of an ancient power and risk everything. Lena didn't hesitate. "We don't run. We don't hide." Her voice rang out with absolute certainty, and for the first time since the signal had been received, she felt a glimmer of hope. They had come this far. They had earned their place in the galaxy. There was no going back. "Prepare the fleet. We're going in," she ordered. The human fleet, now fully equipped with the combined strength of their own innovations and the stolen technologies of the Elcorians, moved toward the heart of the anomaly. As they crossed the threshold, reality itself seemed to bend and twist around them. Gravity shifted, time stretched and contracted, and space itself seemed to warp. But despite the chaos, the humans pressed on, determined to face whatever lay beyond. In the distance, massive, monolithic structures drifted in the void, remnants of the Elders' empire, scattered and broken, but still brimming with incomprehensible power. These structures pulsed with an energy that made the Thunderclash's sensors flicker and hum as though they were alive, watching. Lena stood on the bridge, her gaze fixed on the glowing structures. There was no doubt in her mind now. They were not just navigating through a natural phenomenon. They were in the heart of the Elders' domain. This was their power, their legacy. And if humanity was to survive, they would have to fight not just to hold their own, but to seize that power for themselves. "Captain," Dr. Cortez spoke again, his voice filled with awe and fear. "This isn't just a power source, it's a weapon." Lena nodded grimly. The structures they were approaching were far more than ancient artifacts. They were weapons of unimaginable destruction, remnants of a race that had shaped the galaxy. If the Elders truly meant to erase humanity, they could unleash devastation beyond anything the human race had ever imagined. But if they could harness that power— "Make no mistake," Lena said, her voice low and resolute. "This isn't just about surviving. This is about rewriting history. Humanity has a place in the galaxy, and we're not leaving without it." The final confrontation was imminent. The forces of the Elders, unknowable and ancient, stood between humanity and its future. The fate of the galaxy now rested in the hands of a species that had only just begun to prove its worth. And as Lena gazed into the heart of the anomaly, she knew one thing with certainty. Humanity would not be— As the Thunderclash and its fleet advanced into the heart of the anomaly, the very fabric of space seemed to pulse around them. Gravity warped in unpredictable ways, time distorted in subtle, unnerving shifts. The crew aboard the Thunderclash held their breath, each moment filled with tension. The Elders were not just watching, they were waiting, and what would come next, no one knew. Lena Davis stood on the bridge, her face pale with concentration as her eyes flicked between the eyes' data feeds, trying to make sense of the chaos unfolding around them. Every system was glitching, every sensor giving off erratic readings. The deep, ominous hum of the Elders' ancient technology seemed to permeate the ship, vibrating in the walls like an oppressive force. "Captain," Dr. Aiden Cortez's voice crackled through the comms, his words heavy with urgency. "I'm detecting a massive surge of energy at the core of the anomaly. It's unlike anything we've ever encountered. It's almost alive." Lena nodded sharply, her jaw tightening. "I know. We've crossed into their domain. The Elders have set the stage for the final act, and we're about to play our part." "Are we sure we can defeat them?" Cortez asked, his voice laced with concern. "This isn't just a fight for survival anymore. It's a battle for the future of the galaxy." Lena's eyes hardened, and she turned to face the viewports. Outside, the Elders' ancient ships, structures that looked like vast, sentient fortresses, loomed in the distance. Some appeared to be dormant, others pulsing with immense unearthly power. They seemed to be watching, studying, their ancient intelligence calculating the move humanity would make next. The human fleet advanced toward the heart of the anomaly. They had no idea how much time they had before the Elders unleashed their full might, but Lena wasn't about to let humanity cower in fear. "Prepare for everything," she said with finality. "We will fight to the end. There's no going back." As the Thunderclash drew closer to the Elders' structures, the star systems around them began to distort even further. A sudden, violent pulse of energy blasted through the fleet, shaking the ships to their core. Emergency lights flickered, and alarms blared as systems temporarily overloaded. "Impact!" shouted one of the bridge officers, panic rising in their voice. "The fleet's shields are down. We've lost power to several key systems." Lena's heart raced. but she stood firm. The crew was looking to her now for leadership. She couldn't afford to hesitate. "Hold it together," she barked. "Get those shields back online. Bring the power levels back to full strength. We're not backing down." The crew scrambled to regain control. But even as they worked, another pulse shot through the anomaly. This one stronger, more deliberate. It was as if the elders were testing their resolve, measuring their willingness to endure. Lena clenched her fists. The elders were not just a threat. They were a force that commanded the galaxy with an intelligence and power far beyond the capabilities of any species. The temptation to run, to retreat, was overwhelming. But humanity had come too far to turn back now. Then came a voice, not from the communications network, but from the very air itself. "Humanity, you have failed to understand the scale of your transgression." The voice was calm, deliberate, cold. "You dare challenge us? You will face the consequences of your arrogance." The voice echoed in every crevice of the ship, as though it was coming from every corner of the universe. At once, Lena's breath caught. There was no denying the power the elders wielded, but she could hear the pride in their tone. They were ancient beings who had ruled without opposition. But now, they faced a species that had defied expectations and fought against insurmountable odds. "You have seen only a fraction of what we possess. Leave now, and we may allow your species to survive, to remain in the shadows of the galaxy. Persist in your foolishness, and you will be erased." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving a cold silence in its wake. Lena's gaze shifted to the viewports once again. The elder ships were now advancing toward them, massive and imposing. They glowed with an unsettling, otherworldly light, the energy emanating from them bending the space around them. The full scale of their power was impossible to comprehend. But the human fleet was now fully committed to the fight. There was no turning back. "We've been given a choice," Lena said, her voice steady despite the overwhelming danger. "And we are not going to back down. We've shown the galaxy that humanity will fight for its place. Now we will prove that we will fight for our future." The fleet's engines roared as they surged forward, breaking through the distortion caused by the elders' presence. The first shots were fired, but they seemed to have little effect on the behemoth ships of the elders. Massive energy beams struck the human vessels, sending ripples through their shields. But instead of retreating, the human ships rallied. They fired back with everything they had: laser beams, missiles, and the experimental weapons they had developed using the technologies they'd stolen from their enemies. For the first time, the humans were on the offensive. They weren't just defending anymore, they were fighting for the right to exist. Lena watched as the thunderclash fired its cannons, unleashing devastating energy blasts at the nearest elder ship. The impact sent a shock wave through space, but the ship seemed to absorb the damage, regenerating its energy almost instantly. "We can't beat them head on," Lena muttered to herself. "We need to find a way to turn the tide." Suddenly, an idea struck her. The anomaly, the disturbance they had been traveling through, wasn't just a physical barrier. It was a cosmic anomaly, a rift in space-time that was likely connected to the elder ship's ability to manipulate the galaxy. If humanity could disrupt the anomaly, they could destabilize the elders' power. "Cortez," she ordered, her voice sharp. "We need to find a way to exploit the anomaly. There's something in there that's giving them their power. Can you do it?" Cortez didn't hesitate. "I'll make it work." Lena nodded, the weight of the mission heavier than ever. She knew the stakes had never been higher. Humanity had stood before impossible odds before. But this was their final gamble. As the battle raged around her, she steeled herself for the unknown. If they could exploit the anomaly and disrupt the elders' control, they might have a fighting The chaos of battle swirled around Lena and the crew of the Thunderclash as they pushed deeper into the heart of the Elder's domain. Energy beams, missiles, and space debris filled the vacuum, the shimmering void of the galaxy shattered by the violent clash of technologies. Yet in the midst of it all, Lena remained focused. There was no room for doubt now. This was humanity's moment, their last chance to carve out a future in a galaxy that had long overlooked them. The Elders' ships loomed large, their massive structures almost sentient in their presence. With every shot from the human fleet, the Elders retaliated with unfathomable force. The human ships, while technologically advanced, were like ants against gods in the grand scale of the battle. Yet, Lena could feel the undercurrent of something larger, something unexpected. The human spirit, their refusal to bow in the face of annihilation, was beginning to resonate across the battlefield. A sharp voice broke through her thoughts. "Captain, we've got a real problem." Dr. Aiden Cortez's voice rang through the comms. "The anomaly, it's starting to collapse. The Elder's control is slipping." Lena's pulse quickened. "What does that mean? Are we winning?" "Not yet," Cortez replied grimly. "The collapse of the anomaly is destabilizing their ships, but if we don't act fast, their core will implode, and it will take everything with it, us included, AT. Heavy silence fell across the bridge. Every crew member understood the gravity of the situation. If the anomaly collapsed completely, it would annihilate not just the Elders, but all life within its vicinity. The human fleet could survive a direct hit, but the entire galaxy would be plunged into chaos. Worse, the technology humanity had gained from the Zorix, Zalith, and other alien species would be lost forever. "We don't have a choice," Lena said, her voice firm. "We need to finish this. We need to destroy the Elder's control center and stabilize the anomaly before it collapses." "We're close," Cortez added. "I've pinpointed the source of their control. It's a massive energy node located on the largest Elder ship. If we can disable it, the rest of their fleet will fall apart." "Then we hit them where it hurts," Lena said, her eyes narrowing with determination. "We're going in. All ships converge on that core. This is humanity's final strike. No retreat." The fleet, battered but resolute, maneuvered through the chaos. The human ships were swift, agile in ways the hulking Elder ships could never be. Their weapon systems were newly upgraded, and now, with Cortez's calculated strategy, they aimed for the heart of the Elder's power, an enormous pulsating structure at the center of the largest ship. As they neared the target, an ominous shadow fell over the Thunderclash. A massive, obsidian-colored Elder vessel appeared out of nowhere, a gargantuan wall of technology that seemed to bend the very space around it. It moved with unnatural precision, its weapons charging for a final decisive strike. Lena's grip tightened on the console. "Brace for impact," she ordered, her voice steady despite the storm of fear brewing in her chest. The Thunderclash shook as a blast from the Elder ship hit the shields, the force rattling the entire vessel. "We're almost there," said Captain Elena Silva, the Thunderclash's weapons officer. Her hands moved across the control panel with urgency. "Firing in 3, 2..." The ship's main cannon erupted with a deafening roar, sending a focused blast of energy toward the Elder vessel's exposed core. The shot pierced the defenses, but instead of collapsing the ship outright, it triggered a chain reaction of feedback. "The core's destabilizing," Cortez shouted, his voice tense with excitement. "We've done it. The Elder's control. Node is failing." But just as victory seemed within reach, the anomaly pulsed violently. The energy field surrounding the anomaly expanded, warping space and time itself, threatening to consume everything in its wake. Lena felt the ship lurch forward as the entire fleet was caught in the gravitational pull of the anomaly's dying breaths. The human ships fought to maintain control, but the strain was overwhelming. Shields were failing, engines sputtering, and every second felt like a fight for survival. "Get to the core," Lena shouted. "We need to finish this now." The crew, battered but relentless, surged forward, pushing through the chaos toward the heart of the collapsing anomaly. The Thunderclash's engines roared as it powered through the distortion, closing in on the massive energy node at the center of the Elder flagship. With every passing moment, the rift in space-time grew larger, the Elders' ships now spiraling into oblivion, their once imposing presence now nothing more than a fading memory in the wake of humanity's defiance. Finally, Lena's eyes locked onto the heart of the anomaly. The energy node glowed brighter than the stars themselves, an unstable force of raw power. A single decisive shot was all that was needed. "Now!" Lena commanded. Elena Silva unleashed the final barrage, and the blast struck true. The energy node exploded in a blinding burst of light, sending shockwaves throughout the anomaly. For a moment, everything seemed to freeze. Time, space, and even the heartbeat of the universe itself. Then, as the light began to fade, the anomaly collapsed in on itself. The Elder ships, their ancient power now extinguished, began to break, apart and disintegrate. The threat was over. Humanity had won. The remaining ships of the fleet floated in the void, battered but alive. Their enemies were gone, their legacy erased from the stars. The galaxy, once ruled by the Elders and their overwhelming power, was now free. Lena stood tall, her gaze fixed on the stars ahead. The battle had been won, but the true victory lay in the fact that humanity had earned its place in the galaxy, not through brute force or sheer power, but through their indomitable will to survive and to shape their own destiny. As the remnants of the anomaly faded into the distance, Lena knew that the galaxy would never forget the day the Elders had learned what it truly meant to face humanity's